It's a real blessing to feel a sense of purpose in these times. It's a real blessing to be able to take the feelings of fear and grief, etc., and actually channel them somewhere into running a group or to making a film or, doing your podcasts. And I think it's important that people really tune in to find out what they're given to do at this time. To really listen to what the call is in you and follow it. I think there's something that's very generative and supportive about feeling a sense of purpose in a time of collapse.
So another episode of the Conscient podcast, this one with my guest Michael Shaw, who is in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you and welcome, Michael.
Yeah, thank you, Claude.
So, I feel we're like brothers in the cause, so to speak, because when I saw your film, Living in the Time of Dying, it really touched me very much. And I've joined some of your support groups, and I've been impressed by your work. And what I ask the guests to do is to listen to the reality program, which you've done, I think. So I'd like to start first by just introducing yourself. In fact, I don't even know your background myself. I just know that you're very engaged in climate, the emergency. But so why don't you tell us about yourself, and then we can jump into the conversation about reality.
Yes, well, my background's very varied, really. I was teaching an anti-bullying program in primary schools for about a decade. Also working as a therapist. So I'm a trained therapist as well as a trained teacher. I have a business background before that, but then when I really landed, well, it was two things happened at the same time. I got cancer, and that really sort of brought my life into a very condensed focus of what's important. And right around that time, I also met Catherine Ingram and was spending a lot of time with her before she wrote Facing Extinction, actually. And so the combination of those two events happening together left me very solidly focused on what's important in this life to live for, and perhaps not being so afraid to look at my own death either, which made the whole thing easier to look at. So it streamlined me into a very solid focus on what we're facing.
Dharma teacher Catherine Ingram. Love. What else is there to do now? Here we are, some of the last humans who will experience this beautiful planet since Homo sapiens began their journey some 200,000 years ago. Now, in facing extinction of our species, you may wonder if there's any point in going on. Well, we'll get back to Catherine Ingram because you actually introduced her to me through your film and your work with her. So what response did you have when you listened to the reality program and the idea of reality and ecological grief?
Well, first of all, I really enjoyed your creative approach to... I mean, there's so many different ways we can go with this when we understand what's going on. I tend, probably because of my training, I tend to go to, well, how are we going to meet this emotionally and spiritually? How are we going to hold this? But I felt that in yours as well as that whole creative opening that you made. So it was just it was a beautiful dance of the creative and the emotional and the factual. So nothing is news to me in that.
Yeah.
I just
you've been there.
yeah. I mean, I think as I said to you, I was driving to the airport that day, and it was just pre-dawn and the beginning of dawn, and it was raining, and your podcast was just a beautiful journey for me, a beautiful inner journey into the landscape you created.
My dream, as then teacher David Loy suggests, is that one day we can realize our non-duality with nature and begin to live in ways that accord with that realization. Well, maybe you can tell us a bit about how living in a time of dying came about, because you've already talked about your illness and your connection with Buddhism, but I'm interested to know how that started and what you're trying to accomplish, and maybe just explain to people what it is.
Yeah. Well, look, it was my response to really coming into the understanding of the fact that we are facing extinction. And to be honest, a lot of it happened. There was a lot. So I was spending a lot of time with Catherine Ingram over about a 3-year period, and I did a week-long retreat with her. And in that silent retreat, the idea for the documentary really landed in me. Now, I am not a documentary maker. I've never made a documentary. I've never even wanted to make a documentary. So, just to put that on you in the context of this.
But you did pretty well.
Yes, yeah, thank you. And so total absolute beginner, and I just knew I had to do that. And, in a sense, it's a real blessing when you get something like that. Like, this is what I have to do, and I know I have to do it. So everything else can kind of congeal around that one thought. And then things opened up for me. I wrote to Jem Bendell, and, Jem Bendell at that time, he'd just finished writing Deep Adaptation, and he said he had thousands of emails that were just on automatic reply. For some reason, he was in front of his computer. He saw my email. He opened it and he responded. So, that's just sort of that's just like a freak of nature, isn't it? And so then that opened up, and then when I interviewed Da, the way was open to interview Stan, who was one of Da's mentors and friends. So it happened, it rolled out pretty quickly. Yeah. But I think my primary interest was I had to talk to people who were talking about this. I had to talk to people who had that same understanding. And I felt like I needed to give that out to a wider community.
Well, I encourage people to watch the film, because we can't encapsulate. It sort of takes the viewer on a journey through your experience and the people that you think need to be heard about the climate emergency. Yeah. But there is a dark side to it, especially Catherine Ingram, who is pretty clear in her reading of the situation that we are facing extinction in a most definitive way. But what was touching for me is that her Buddhism, which is similar to mine, it gives it a whole other view. Dharma teacher Catherine Ingram. Despite having caused so much destruction, it is important to consider the wide spectrum of possibilities that make up human life. Yes, on one end of that spectrum is greed, cruelty, and ignorance. On the other end is kindness, compassion, and wisdom.
We are imbued with great creativity, brilliant communication, and extraordinary appreciation of and talent for music and other forms of art. There is no other known creature whose spectrum of consciousness is as wide and varied as our own.
You put it in context and you think about what is really happening and the things that we can't change, and yet the things that are so important in the way that we live moment to moment. So that I'm sure that was an inspiration to you, but it was also something you needed to discover and that's sort of why I'm doing this podcast, quite frankly, as I'm talking to people who that's why I think we're brothers. I think can help me and the people who are maybe like me to better understand what really is going on. I use the word reality, but you could use the word truth. You can use the word, different words. But that reality led me to ecological grief, which one needs to go through, and then you decide what you can do, what you want to do, and you've clearly. So what else are you doing? I know you're doing the support group, and you're trying to offer a window for people to manage their grief.
Well, I think it's. I liked how you put that. Actually, there's two things. One is being really willing to face the truth of what's happening, and Catherine Ingram's essay is second to none in that. So, no sugarcoating. Let's just look at the reality of the situation, and travel with that for a while. And then for me, and I think for you too, which is I think what you're saying around the feeling like brothers, when you really get that this whole thing's coming down, and we don't know about extinction, nobody knows about extinction really, but if we're not going extinct, we're going close to being extinct. There's a tremendous collapse that's not very far away. And if we really accept that, and if we really accept that life may be short, then what opens up in us? What opens up in me? What opens up in you? Certainly there a lot of grief. Certainly a lot of, can be fear. I'm not above feeling my dose of fear and grief, but there's also something else. So it's not like there's these things or there's these things, but there's also something else that comes along with that, and that's a real increased appreciation for the moment and the beauty of the moment and the beauty of the planet that we live in, next to the grief of what we're losing, next to the beauty of what's here. It's like a dance.
Environmental Humanities Professor Jennifer Atkinson. Eco-anxiety and climate grief are sometimes framed as disorders. But in fact, these feelings typically arise from an accurate perception of our ecological crisis. It may be more appropriate to identify eco-anxiety as a moral emotion, a sign of compassion, attachment to life, and desire for justice. Our future remains unwritten, and by embracing the unknown, we are better able to reframe our thinking in empowering ways.
It's like a dance, where you recognize things don't last, and things have never lasted. Our lives have never, we've never had a guarantee on the length of life that we're going to live. We've never had that. We've always known that. Everything that's born dies. We've always known that.
Though we haven't always accepted it.
Yes, yes. So when it's in your face, you know, like we're living in planetary hospice, and often people living in hospice situations have tremendous awakenings and tremendous love and tremendous connection to the people that, you know, in their lives that matter. So that's where we are.
And how have you felt that people? What kind of support do people need in times like this? I mean, you can console them, I mean, or you can hit them over the head with truth. You know.
Well, look, each to their own. I'm not a head hitter. And you know, and I think probably you're not either, given you know what I heard in that in your podcast and the sort of beauty that you dance around in what you're creating. But I'm not a head hitter. I want to offer people a space to grieve, to speak about it openly, to speak about what's going on openly without being restricted by other people's fear that shut the conversation down. I want that. I want people to be able to grieve, and I want people to be able to feel also the possibilities of the moment, which are immense, you know. Yeah, I don't know how else to put that, but you know, it's a combination of all those things. And I don't look, if people don't want to know about it, then I'm happy to leave them alone. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to convert anybody. You know, if someone says it's all shit and you know we're going to go on for another 3,000 years, then good on them. You know, do your own thing.
Well, one of the topics that I tried to address in the episode was the notion of hope, you know, because it's a word that's used in different ways. And so how do you deal with hope then? Or the lack thereof?
Journalist Dal Jamal. My heart breaks for what we have done and are doing to the planet. I grieve. Yet this ongoing process has become more like peeling back the layers of an onion. There is always more work to do as the crisis we have created for ourselves continues to unfold. And somewhere along the line, I surrendered my attachment to any results that might stem from my work. I am hope free.
Well, it's a bigger question than it seems, isn't it? I mean, you know, on the surface, like Stephen Jenkinson talks about hope and talks about hope being the enemy of grief, and I think there's just a lot of truth in that. Hope can get in our way of really recognizing the truth of things. So if you're dying in hospice and you're hoping to survive, then there's a lot of possibilities that don't open to you in that space because you're not fully available for where you are in time. Having said that, I'm as susceptible to hope as the next person, you know. I have my distractions and you know, my future thoughts and my plans. None of that disappears, except I probably have a lighter touch with them. I know what I'm doing. Okay, I just need to have hope right now, and I'll do that. But I don't really carry it in a serious way, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Like a false hope. Well, I struggle with it as well, and I think the word isn't quite right because, there's a sense of what is really happening, what is likely to happen, what am I feeling, and that informs, your judgment and that. And there are times when I just want to be inspired to deal with the moment. Like I also, I'm 61, I'll die sooner than later. Coming to terms with that, coming to terms with the finality of any cycle and the fact that it's actually never really final anyway, because even if humans leave the planet will continue.
Yes.
Right? They're scary thoughts. There are people have trouble. I had trouble approaching those. How do I approach it? I'm an artist, so I started creating around it. But I understand people who have fears, but I also think that there's something that gets released, and Catherine talks about this in Facing Extinction. There's something that is more peaceful when you come to terms with what you believe to be true. And in the program, I talk about Yuval Harari talks about how a lot of the things around us are fictions, like money and so what is true? What is really going on in this life, this precious life that we have moment by moment? And I think your film, and I want to talk a little bit about art because you chose a medium that's a difficult one, to tell a story. And you did it well because it was so authentic. It was your voice. You went out, you asked questions, and you pulled together a series of experiences that kind of take the viewer to a place where they can then make up their own minds. So I think it was successful in that sense. But my question, I guess, is when you made the film, did you weren't thinking that you were going to convert anybody, you've admitted that, but you were hoping that it would serve a role in people's lives, like to maybe not to wake them up, but at least to give them something to work from.
Yes. I think it's a good question, and thank you. I think one of the things that I was really feeling when I was coming into the understanding, and I want to go back, there's something else to say about hope too, but I want to go back there, but I'll finish this first, is that so much is being said around the science of this. So we're getting inundated with scientific facts around the collapse. And we're also getting fed a lot of news around political collapse at the same time, particularly in America, but that's going to be something that spreads. And I just felt like, who's talking about how to handle this emotionally? Who's going there? And I didn't have a lot of, Caroline Baker actually is a great voice on this as well. I felt like I wanted to I wanted to set up a way to approach this issue in a way that keeps our hearts open. Because even if we are in collapse, how can we go through collapse more gently, more gracefully, with more care for each other? And that's only going to happen if our hearts are open. And that's only going to happen if we're a bit less afraid and a bit more available to life.
You were going to talk about hope.
Well, because I've just been influenced recently reading Caroline Baker's book, Radical Regeneration, and she's of the opinion that there is a possibility that some humans survive. And, we don't know how many, but she's of the possibility that some will survive. And if there are some survivors, then what are those survivors? What will they have learned? And what does the future look like for humanity if we do survive? So to start thinking around, even if I do die, which is likely, but to start thinking around, well, who would I want to be in a future situation where humans are alive? So it lets me think in a positive way, in a hopeful way, if you like. without disregarding the facts of where we are. So I quite like that framework. It's helpful for me right now anyway.
Actor Dominique Champagne. Knowing that I will be leaving my 3 sons in a world in worse condition than the one I inherited from my parents, knowing that we are contemporaries in a world where our actions are jeopardizing the future of life on Earth, and knowing that the situation may get worse, what am I doing with my life? How can I keep putting on shows and spinning balloons on my nose as if nothing had happened?
Well, this program often talks about the role of the arts to imagine new worlds, to comfort our emotions, to open our perspectives on what's going on. And that's a never-ending a process of discovery through the arts, because it's literally infinite, the number of things that one can. But then one does have to become concrete at one point also. And what I'm noticing here in Canada, and I think around the world, is that there is an awakening. People are either terrified or they are motivated to do something for future generations, because you and I, have had a good shot at life, in the sense that we've had access to resources, and that will go logarithmically in diminishing in the future because of what we've done to ourselves. So I take some responsibility, or as much responsibility as I can for that, but I think about future generations, and what you just said is that there is the possibility and there is hope that we can orchestrate a situation so that future generations can have a good life. It won't be our life, our incredibly material life, but I do have that hope for future generations. And anything I can do to prepare that is inspiring to me. It's like, okay, it's a mess, but I don't just want to recycle and then forget about it. I want to commit the rest of my life, and I think you've committed this as well, to not just fixing a problem, because it's unfixable. I had a conversation with an activist in Vancouver named Anjali Appadurai, who's brilliant, and she talked about the long history of this collapse. It's not started 10 years ago, it's not started 100 years ago. If you look at colonization and just the way that humanity has unfolded, this has been announced a long time ago. We started abusing the environment. We didn't take nature seriously, right? There's all these philosophical issues that are deeply, deeply problematic that point to our transformation or possible extinction. But the arts help, and they help me anyway, in all kinds of ways. And your film helped me because it gave me a bit of breathing room. It allowed me to just sink into some ideas that I otherwise might not have approached as easily.
I mean, look, all hail the arts, really. I feel like Dar Jamal talks about this as well, like when you really find out what's true, then and listen to the earth for what she wants us to do, that might be playing the piano, that might be writing music, that might be painting. It doesn't really matter. But I think that art has always had that way to transmit some deeper feeling that words can't get to, and that's what we need. That's what we need to be coming back into our hearts at this time, particularly as things get harder and people get afraid. There's going to be no end of trouble when people start getting afraid. So we need these islands of sanity, people that can contain themselves and keep their hearts open to each other. We're going to need that. And if art is part of that story, then hallelujah,
Writer Robin Wall Kimmerer. The land is the real teacher. All we need as students is mindfulness.
Well, we're near the end. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about or to raise before we
it's such a big topic, isn't it?
Yes. Well, it's everything, right? It's like life.
It's everything. It's life and death and purpose. I think it's worth saying something about purpose for a minute there, because which doesn't step away too much from the arts either, but it's a real blessing to feel a sense of purpose in these times. It's a real blessing to be able to take the feelings of fear and grief, etc., and actually channel them somewhere into running a group or to making a film or, doing your podcasts. And I think it's important that people really tune in to find out what they're given to do at this time. And that might not be obvious. That might be, I need to go silent and sit and meditate, every day. That's what I'm called to do. I need to love my family, I need to grow some things outside. I need to play the guitar, I need to run a group. I need to find out what's going on. I need to immerse in the science of this. Like to really listen to what the call is in you and follow it. I think there's something that's very generative and supportive about feeling a sense of purpose in a time of collapse.
Well, on that note, our purpose today was to have a conversation, and we've done that. I want to thank you, Michael Shaw, for literally on the other side of the world, and tomorrow.
Yes, right. This is what the future looks like over here.
Well, I mean, it's nice that it allows us to talk to each other.
Yeah.
Let's keep in touch. I'm part of one of your support groups, so we'll see each other again.
Yeah.
And thank you for taking the time and for sharing your experience and your knowledge.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for your work, Claude, and thank you for your presence in the group too. I feel like what you're giving is a gift to the listeners. So, many thanks to you.